Hey everyone, in this chapter 13 video, we're going to discuss the cost of production. So since cost is tied with supply, we'll go into more of the factors that influence a firm's supply. We'll talk about behavior of industrial organizations and the study of how a firm's decisions about price and quantities depend on market conditions they face. So is it more competitive or not? So obviously, a firm's costs are a big driver of their behavior, and that's for obvious reasons. Their profit is equal to their total cost minus their total revenue minus their total cost. Total revenue being the amount the firm receives, total cost being the market value of inputs used. There are different costs that we'll end up discussing. So profit is total revenue minus total cost. We're going to hit on a key point here is that this is not accounting, this is economics. The economic cost factor in something that accountants do not, which is the opportunity cost. So the opportunity cost is the cost of the value of the second best option for your resources. So if you have the choice between investing your money in a bank and earning 5%, or doing this other opportunity that you hope earns you 6%, that 5% that you could have earned with the next best investment is your opportunity cost. So when we talk about profits being driven to zero, those are economic profits. You can still make accounting profits, so that would be the 5% in that case. Even if you don't make anything on top of that, there's still an accounting profit of 5%, but a zero economic profit if you don't make anything above that 5%. So, like I said, we're going to talk about many different types of cost. Explicit cost require an outlay of money by the firm, but implicit cost do not. It's the type of opportunity cost. So the cost of me teaching this course is the salary I could be making from a higher paying job, but I also earn non-monetary benefits because I enjoy teaching. I enjoy this experience. So that's value that I get in a non-monetary form. Economists will refer to this as utility or utils of happiness. It's utils of happiness. So let's say we're considering investing in a business versus just investing our money. So we have $100,000 that we use from our account that we could earn $5,000 annually in interest. Then we also borrow $200,000 from the bank, and the interest on that loan is $10,000 a year. So that's $5,000 in implicit cost. So that's the interest that we could be earning, but we're not spending $5,000 a year, but we are spending $10,000 a year uh, in explicit cost to service that loan and pay the $10,000 interest per year on our loan. Now compare that to if we just bought out the company outright for $300,000, that would be giving up the 5% return on that, which would have been $15,000 a year. Compare that between the two examples, and the reaches the same $15,000 annually. But that's not necessarily always going to be the case, because generally you're going to pay higher interest rates on money you're borrowing than the interest rate you're going to earn by savings. This is an important point that I want to make sure that you remember coming out of this class. Accounting profit is total revenue minus the explicit cost. Economic profit is total revenue minus total cost. Total costs include both the explicit and the implicit costs, so they include the opportunity cost. Looking at figure 1, accounting profit is going to be greater than economic profit because it doesn't include one of the costs. Let's go ahead and pause for the quick quiz. I had a professor in advanced econometrics who would flat out say, I'm going to require you to define a p-value on a test. Let's go ahead and assume that I'm going to require you to know the difference between accounting and not economic profit for a quiz or test. And if I forget to put it on there, well, then you should still know it. So question 1, Farmer McDonald gives banjo lessons for $20 per hour. One day he spends 10 hours planting $100 worth of seeds on his farm. What total cost has he incurred? That's C, $300, because $100 for the seeds plus the $200 he would have earned over those 10 hours equals a total cost of $300. Question 2, Xavier opens a lemonade stand for 2 hours. He spends $10 for ingredients and sells $60 worth of lemonade. In the same 2 hours, he could have mowed his neighbor's lawn for $40. So Xavier earns an accounting profit of $50 and an economic profit of $10 because the explicit costs are 10, the implicit costs are 40, the total revenue is 60, and so the accounting profit is 50, but the economic profit is only 10. Hopefully you remember from a previous chapter that we discussed the PPF, or the production possibilities frontier, that we graphed to show how much we could produce when choosing between two goods and the combination of the two. But now we're going to talk about the production function, which is the relationship between the quantity of inputs used to make a good and the quantity of output of that good. Here, this shows the values don't necessarily change in one-for-one increments. That's because of the declining marginal productivity of labor, despite the increase in total cost remaining constant. So let's say that you have a kitchen and you continue adding in chefs in there. Eventually you have too many chefs in the kitchen, and each chef you add was not adding the same quantity of output as the prior chef. They're adding less. You can see that in the curve here as it levels off. The output quantity levels off as you increase the number of workers, or as it says here, it flattens out. That's because of the diminishing marginal product, a term that you need to be very familiar with. Compare that to the total cost curve. That one slopes up, and that's for the same reason. Might as well go ahead and tattoo the word marginal on you because you're going to keep on hearing it. In this case, it's the increase in output that arises from an additional single unit of input. Right here, we formally define the diminishing marginal product, which is the property whereby the marginal product of an input declines as the quantity of the input increases. Let's go ahead and pause for the quick quiz. All right, question 3, Farmer Green faces diminishing marginal product. If she plants no seeds on her farm, she gets no harvest. If she plants 1 bag of seeds, she gets 3 bushels of wheat. If she plants 2 bags, she gets 5. If she plants 3 bags, she gets 6 bushels. That's because her gain was 2 from the second bag, so adding another bag will gain her less than 2, so 1. So 5 plus 1 equals 6. That's A. Question 4, the diminishing marginal product explains why as a firm's output increases. D, the production function gets flatter while the total cost curve gets steeper. It's increasing. Here in table 2, it goes over different cost. So output 0 through 10. We've got the total cost and how it increases, along with the fixed cost, variable, average fixed cost, average variable cost, average total cost, and then marginal cost. So you're going to hear me use Desmos sometimes as an online tool for graphing things. I invite you to check out Desmos and try to plug in some of these values and see how the curve looks. Remember that this output right here, you're going to plug in as your x coordinate, and then column 2, the y coordinate. You can plug in these other values. I've done that here. So 0 quantity, 1 quantity, all the way through. I did 6, I think. There goes 3, 3.3, 3.8, etc. Shows that's upward sloping total cost here. And then if you want, I'm not going to require that for this course, but if you want, you can derive the formula for this and show how it graphs. You can see the book has a similar graph completed there. So in talking about those individual cost types, we've got fixed cost, which do not vary with output, at least not in the short run. And then variable cost, they do vary with output. So like fixed cost may be the cost of the land you're producing on, but variable cost may be how many hours of labor you're contributing or how many bags of wheat you're using. We've got average total cost, which is total cost divided by the quantity of output, or TC over Q. Average fixed cost, which is going to be your fixed cost divided by your quantity, and then average variable cost, or your variable cost divided by your quantity. Then your marginal cost is the increase in total cost that arises from an extra single unit of production. So average total cost includes all cost, hence the total divided by quantity. Average fixed cost includes your fixed cost, like your building site, divided by your quantity. And then average variable cost includes those costs like labor divided by the quantity. And then, of course, your marginal cost is at the margin, so how much your next increase in quantity is divided by your total cost. I recommend you draw this graph, save this graph, practice this graph, label this graph, constantly refer back to this graph, because we're going to have versions of this graph throughout this and subsequent chapters, and you're going to need to know how different assumptions change how we follow these curves. So right here we've got the marginal cost curve, which is generally increasing because it reflects the diminishing marginal returns to input. It can initially fall, so it could initially go like this and then go up if a underutilized resource is getting better utilized as output increases. And then your average total cost here, it's not linear, so that means it's not a straight line, it's U-shaped, and that's because early on fixed costs dominate and variable costs dominate later on after the inflection point. So the average total cost has a minimum point, which is about here. Then you've got your average variable cost. That right here is represented here by a straight linear line, but similar to marginal cost, it can fall early on and then rise if some resources were underutilized initially. Then you've got your average fixed cost right here. So again, that's showing here as nonlinear. So it's declining as output increases since fixed costs get spread out over more units. That's average fixed cost spread out over more units, not changing as output increases. So it's getting utilized, spread out as more units increase. So we talked about how the average total cost curve has a U shape right here. Where that minimum falls is, and the quantity associated with it is the efficient scale, or the quantity of output that minimizes the average total cost curve. If you remember from math classes, you've got a shape like this. There's a minimum right here. Well, that's what we're looking at here. And your minimum right here, and the associated quantity right here in economics is the efficient scale. So that also occurs where it intersects with the marginal cost curve. So at quantities lower than this point, average total costs are falling. But after this point, average total costs are climbing. This is the tipping point. So this is an important point in quantity here. This is a slightly different version of that graph. You've got the same curves, but they have some different shapes. So as I mentioned, some of these can initially fall, like the marginal cost curve, as a resource gets better utilized. It was underutilized at these quantities. Marginal cost is falling because you're better utilizing resources, but then there's a tipping point, and from this point forward, marginal costs are increasing. So it's not a straight line. And then this is another graph that you're going to want to refer back to, become familiar with it, be prepared to draw it, and be prepared to understand the concept of why the curves are shaped the way they are. So let's go ahead and pause for the quick quiz and attempt questions 5 through 7 and then come back. All right, question 5. A firm is producing 1,000 units at a total cost of $5,000. When it increases production to 1,001 units, the marginal cost is $8 and the total cost is $5. Average total cost, sorry. Because to produce that additional unit, the ATC, or average total cost, is 5,008 divided by 1,001, the total units. For question 6, a firm is producing 20 units with an average total cost of $25 and a marginal cost of $15. If it increases production to 21 units, which of the following must occur? Let's see. The average total cost will decrease. That's because the average total cost at points on the graph where ATC is greater than marginal cost, as in this example where the ATC is 25 and marginal cost is 15, means that we're in the downward sloping part of ATC. So right here. So it will decrease until ATC equals MC right here, and then only then will it start increasing. So remember, when the marginal cost is below ATC, or average total cost, it drags the average down, just like a low quiz score pulls down your average grade. And then question 7, the government imposes a $1,000 per year license fee on all pizza reference. As a result, which cost curve shifts? That's B, the average total cost and average fixed cost curves will shift. So now we're going to discuss the short run versus long run cost, because in economics, the long run and short run requires different assumptions and leads to different conclusions. In the short run, fixed costs are fixed, but in the long run, we can build new factories and shut down factories. So looking here in figure 6, fixed costs are variable in the long run because you can change factories, shut them down. The average total cost curve in the short run differs from the average total cost curve in the long run. No concepts here. Economies of scale, that's going to lead to decreasing cost. Then you've got constant returns to scale. And then eventually you have diseconomies of scale. That relates to those upward sloping cost curves we discussed. So economies of scale, the property whereby long run average total cost falls as the quantity of output increases. So that's this part of the curve. Diseconomies of scale, whereby the long run average total cost curve cost rises as output increases. So that's not good. And then constant returns to scale, whereby the average total cost stays the same as output quantities change. All right, let's go ahead and pause for quick questions 8 and 9. So if a higher level of production allows workers to specialize in particular tasks, a firm will likely exhibit economies of scale and falling average total cost. And then question 9, if Boeing produces 9 jets per month and its long run total cost is $9 million per month, if it produces 10 jets per month, its long run total cost is $11 per month. Boeing is exhibiting D, diseconomies of scale, because its long run total cost is increasing. Let's take a look at table 3, and you're going to want to revisit this. I recommend writing or typing it out, get familiar with it, make sure you can match the math up with the term, understand the definition of why it is the way it is, then look back at your graphs and get the intuition behind why they're shaped the way they are, especially the two different examples where one was linear line and one was nonlinear, decreasing at first and then increasing. You're going to get familiar with that because not only is it relevant for this chapter, but we're going to build on that on subsequent chapters where we talk about different types of market structures. So go back through, make sure you understand all of these terms, think through the different curves and why they're shaped the way they are, because we're going to build on that. All right, if you have any questions, let me know. The end.